I'm pretty excited to see how big of a difference Pyroblast makes in the mirror.
Agreed. I think it's going to be a pretty obvious difference, but I think there are certain cards that we can play and configure.
Yeah, I mean, you get to play with the slots. Like, it frees up 3 sideboard slots.
Yeah.
And you get to kind of play with that a little bit.
Definitely. So we mulligan to 6 and scratch to the bottom. Our hand is not great, but I think it's serviceable, and especially something that I would keep the 6 in the dark pretty much all the time.
Yeah, my hand is not great, but it has cantrips, which is just any miracle hand like that you keep.
Yeah.
Game 1, it's often like a crazy race towards slamming a threat. Counterbalance or Jace are the stickiest.
Yep. Mentor is not so good game 1 because both of us usually have 7 to 8 removal spells that just cleanly answer it.
It's very common game 1 to scoop once your opponent's pretty far ahead, once they establish Counterbalance and Jace, because it's so hard to end the game. It can essentially just lock you out.
Yep. The AK for one, you never want to fight over the first AK, of course. It's just cycling for a card.
Yeah, and generally, I'm a little hesitant in the mirror to fire off AKs, but our hand did us to in this case because it needed some help.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Basically, we're trying to hit our land drop.
Here. Yeah, the planes there is not ideal by any means. Another thing to note also is that I'm playing without AK, though obviously you're not going to know that initially. Another thing we kind of wanted to test out a little bit, and it's a little it's not the cleanest answer, is whether predict plus the full 12 cantrip suite versus 2 to 3 preordains plus 4 AKs matches up well enough. I think the AKs are going to be inherently ahead, but it's not going to be by a lot.
I'm pretty jealous of that preordain though. Like actually, I'm sorry, of that predict there. Actually, netting card advantage on the first one is pretty big.
Yeah, it is.
Jumping ahead a couple cards like that and filtering your draw can be pretty big.
So I'm going to make kind of a strange play here. But I think we're predicated to do so. Oops. Just due to the way that his hand is lining up. Ugh. Okay.
He's hitting me with a predict or a portent.
I'm not, but I wanted to. I thought about
you
it
wanted
first.
to?
I thought about
yeah, you were going to.
I thought about it for a moment, but then I decided not to.
I don't know. I spent all my mana cantripping, so it's pretty easy to assume that I have another either way to manipulate the top of my deck or just cantrip.
Yep. So we just kind of did nothing that turn and just drew a bunch of cards. But I think it's pretty important that we did, just due to, well, this situation that we have going on in our hand right now.
We hit our land, so we're just gonna ram Jace here.
Yep.
There's not.
That's a
the only thing you can have to answer it is force.
Yep. So there was a decision that I made, I think turn 3 or 4, that might come back to bite us here, and it's definitely possible that it could.
This is gonna resolve.
Kind of surprised that it did. That also resolved then, okay.
Nah, but I know my hand.
I see. Alright, well. Another kind of dynamic in the mirror match, especially game ones, is that both of us are going to have pretty terrible cards in hand for the most part. It's blind flip here. Nope, no, just a brainstorm. Okay. Alright, well, first thing I'm going to do is this.
Know about his brainstorm here, but we are gonna spell pierce anyways.
Yeah, and I will
playing it for no value.
Definitely take it. This is forcing me to trade out the brainstorm in my hand, which is I think a reasonable thing to try to do.
And what?
All right. Well, I feel like an okay spot right now, but let's see. It's a million transference. Okay.
Super powerful source of Plowshares.
Extremely so.
And since we forced him to play that brainstorm, we know there's a 1 on top for the counterbalance, so we can try to resolve our own. And now we get to play this
bizarre
counterbalance game.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to do is this. So 1 on top.
So okay. Lucky. Oh wait, no, we're not lucky. We set it up. We're so smart. All right, well, I'm going to make the obvious play here. And if he has a Piercer interaction here, it might be rough for us. We're kind of hoping it doesn't have a 1 or a 2 on top.
Unfortunately, I do not.
It's pretty good for us.
Yeah, I have a pretty bad card on top. So I think that decision that I made on turn 3 or 4 is definitely coming back to bite us here. But so we know he has a plow on top of his library. Think he'll attack, yeah. I will offer the trade this time. Alright, we'll take the trade. So Snapcaster cantrip here.
Basically my hand's pretty bad and we're gonna try to convert some of them with
looks like I'm gonna start off with this. Okay. I'll just pass back then.
I'm gonna do this now because set the top of our library up last turn to try and get this to resolve.
I'm gonna go all in basically here. All right. So I think we are decidedly dead from this spot, unless this counterbalance flip happens, I suppose. Yeah, we're blind to it. Portent, yeah. I think that's gonna do it for us this game. I think that decision. So the decision that I made was to predict away the judgment over a Terminus. Reason being, I wanted to just keep Terminuses in my deck because the game could be kind of drawn far out, but I definitely think that was a mistake in hindsight because I had 2 judgments and 2 Terminuses. Sorry, 2 judgments and 1 Terminus in my hand at the time, and I needed mana as quickly as possible. But I think that definitely cost us that game, to be sure, because then I would have 3 judgments in total instead of 4, or sorry, instead of 2, or 4 judgments instead of 3. Excuse me.
Judgment is pretty weird in the mirror. It's either one of your best cards or just absolutely useless in your hand.
Yes. And more often than not, especially in red versions of the mirrors, it wasn't very good because you had a 1 mana version of the same card, essentially. But I think now, if a lot of versions are going to be blue-white only, it's going to be a little bit different. Sideboarding for me is pretty straightforward. I am taking out the majority of my removal and taking out my copies of main deck back to basics and bringing in all of the blue cards in my sideboard. Karakas, Monastery Mentor, the Search for Azcanta, which we're trying out, 2 clicks of Spell Pierce, and then 3 Flusterstorms, and then as well as a Verdict as another hedge. Thomas Mechon, I want to pronounce his name as. He's my friend from France. He suggested bringing in Surgical Extraction in the mirror match. We might try that a bit later, but for the first round, I'm just going to kind of sideboard pretty straightforwardly.
Yeah, there's kind of one slot that isn't 100% in our list. I like to jump between Plowshares and Surgical Extraction. Surgical only if they have AK.
Yeah, agreed, definitely. If both people aren't predicted, I don't think Surgical actually is worth the card at all. I am, yeah, like I said, I'm boarding out the majority of my removal. I don't really like Plow in the mirror match personally at all. If I hedge, it's usually some number of Terminuses, but blue-white versus blue-white-red kind of also creates this weird dynamic where you want to just muscle in with Mentors as much as possible.
I'm cutting all 4 of my Plows, a Terminus, the Entreat, and a Plains. All the good cards.
Yeah, there's a lot of good cards. So I am on the play. I think there's also a case to be made to be going on the draw post-board now. There's the chance of counterbalance on turn 2 is by far the most threatening thing, but it's also like usually not something that's going to happen for the most part. Usually we'll end up like trading as much as possible with predicts and AKs and so on without having to really rely on counterbalance early and often, but sometimes your hand just is really well set up for it, so you just go for it.
Yeah, a big thing on being on the play is you can resolve a cantrip before they have any kind of Spell Pierce or whatever.
Yeah, the first cantrip I think is like easily the most important.
Yeah, when I'm on the play, I often counter the person's turn 1 cantrip if they have it.
Likewise. That's the scary red card. As unfortunate as it sounds, that's just going to resolve. This likely means also that they have a Flusterstorm up. Or a Red Blast effect.
Yeah, one of the really nice things about having the red splash is you have way more 1-minute interaction.
Yeah. So given the fact that Pierce, Fluster, and Blast are all like very powerful here, I'm going to do this instead. Snapcaster on top. So there's almost certainly like a backup spell of some sort here, no matter what. If it's double backup, then it's double backup. Yeah. So I was right about the Flusterstorm. Unfortunately, the way our hand is laid out, we can't really do much about it. So I'm just gonna pass back here, take the trade. He's shuffling the Snapcaster Mage away, which leads me to believe that he's looking for lands. Because Snapcaster Mage is just so good otherwise. Mentor of his own, okay. So 3 cards in hand versus a million.
One of the big things about Blast is just being able to threaten it with holding red up.
Yeah.
It really like is terrifying in the mirror.
Yeah, there's nothing really I can do right now, so I'm just gonna let him untap. Unfortunately, your hand is not lined up well enough to punish that aggressive use of Force of Will.
We're set except for cantrips on my side, which is unfortunately really how you take advantage of Mentor.
Jace on top. We're kind of hoping this gets tagged with a blast.
We're gonna blast here because we know he can't resolve a Jace on his turn. And we don't want him to see our hand. Otherwise he's just taking the blast, most likely.
We're gonna be cute. Let it resolve.
I'm gonna choose not to flip here because it's just a cantrip that way. Min's very good at guessing.
I hit a Jace anyway.
Oh,
that's pretty entertaining.
Type Jace though. What are you doing? You saw it was on top.
You shuffled.
Flip for this. Yeah, but you saw it.
Okay. Wait, what? No. What?
No, it's a joke. It's a joke.
I'm like, wait, what? I'm so confused. All right, so I portented targeting him. He flipped the Spell Pierce, so we're pretty far behind. And the more spells we cast, the more powerful the Mentor becomes, because it looks like he's just starting on cantrips.
Really, all we need to draw here is cantrips to seal this.
Yeah.
Just sit slightly ahead and...
So we know about a Spell Pierce in hand. Tundra on top. Perfect.
That's a bad one.
I doubt he's going to trade with the Spell Pierce right now. Let's fix our hand a little bit, perhaps. Stand a fighting chance.
That's really against a counterbalance because no matter how well you play, there's always the potential for them to just flip on you. Yep. And it feels so bad. A lot of it's about trapping them into a spot where they have to use a cantrip to set their deck up.
I'm going to continue trading with him, so he's probably going to end up spell piercing this. No, okay.
If I wasn't F6 there, I definitely would have spell pierced it.
Sure.
I have a really bad habit on Moto of just F6ing, and it's definitely lost me so many games.
So I don't think he'll be able to attack with this Monastery Mentor. Okay. Alright, I feel really good about our spot now. first thing I want to do is this. See what's on top of his library, so I know how to leverage the rest of my hand. Plains. Okay, that is...
Oh man, the unluckiest.
Excellent. Let me think.
This is the biggest way you end up winning out from under Counterbalance is you run them out of cantrips.
Yep.
Without losing too many resources, and then you are able to crawl your way back.
So I'm not going to do this immediately. I'll let this happen. That's fine. I am going to do this now, though. So we know about Plains, Spell Pierce, and that's it. So it's likely that this will resolve. All right, so this is a pretty critical turn, I think. Mentor, Spell Pierce. Okay. So I'm definitely gonna let him keep all of those cards.
Terminus can kill your dudes.
Alright, Flooded Strand on top. That's
fantastic. Man, the least amount of lucky.
That is wonderful. So I don't think we actually want either one of these cards. Okay, so we know that he's drawing a blank next turn, and we feel pretty well insulated otherwise.
A Flooded Strand so we can have some form of manipulation over the top of our deck.
Yeah, this is a very strange game so far. So we have perfect information now. I maybe should have actually played this turn. Yeah, I definitely should have.
Except for the top card of my deck.
Correct.
But you just get to know. It has... It looks like ones as targets, so it's pretty safe to flip here.
It's a Council Judgment. Okay.
It's decent for us, because one thing he can do here is just jam Mentor.
So he's keeping because it's a guaranteed spell. Don't think either of these cards are actually worthwhile. And since I know he's drawing Council Judgment now, I think I'm going to go ahead and attack, because he's likely going to choose the Clique with the Judgment, and the other two targets are not great. So he's shuffling away the Judgment now, which is fine. So there's one unknown. Okay, so that's like the worst case scenario here. I am going to attempt to fight over it, however. Flipping a Polluted Delta. That's excellent for us. So it's likely this will end up resolving just due to the fact that we know his hand is Mentor, Terminus, Pierce, Tundra, Plains. This did, however, create an additional monk, so that's not good for us. I am going to trade here. I am going to shuffle this away. Here we go. I'm just gonna ponder. Actually, this was a mistake. I should have. Alright, we're gonna continue clocking in the air. He has the ground kind of locked up at this point. So he's drawing a fetch, a Polluted Delta. Plays the Tundra here. Okay, well, we're gonna trade and kind of cross our fingers. Looks like his plan here is to probably hardcast the Terminus.
Yeah, we're at the point where we're getting enough value out of this Terminus, and we have the other Mentor to try and set up again.
Now this, I kind of assumed he was going to try to go down this route because he had the second Mentor, and I would have done the same thing in his spot. But he gets blown out a little bit, unless he blind flips a 1 exactly. Okay, so he blind flipped a 1. However,
I got there because there's no justice.
Unfortunately, we still have lethal.
Nice.
Three, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, that's definitely lethal.
Yeah, super dead.
That was actually a really, really interesting game.
I think I messed up in one spot. I could have countered one of your cantrips with the spell pierce that I never used to convert it.
Yeah, well, I also could have played around it by playing the land I had in my hand.
Yeah, I don't think it would have gotten me much, though. I was basically in a spot where I needed to hit cantrips.
Yeah, agreed. And you faltered.
The one that is a perk of playing 2 more cantrips in your deck is they're the best spells in your deck for most of the time.
Yep. Besides,
I'm not gonna
go ahead.
Change anything. I'm not gonna change anything for play draw.
I'm not either.
Sometimes if I see something weird out of my opponent's deck, like a Stoneforge package or something like that, I might. Something like that.
Yeah, one of the other members of our Discord has talked about the Stoneforge package and Blue Mirrors. To kind of do similar things to what taking up the same amount of slots as Reb does, but also being like blue-white, like not red, so to speak.
Yeah, not having to play Volcanic Island because it's so bad against any non-blue deck.
Yeah, it is.
Any Wasteland deck.
So he kept a 7. Looks like he was cantripping on turn 1, which is fine. Yep. So it's fine because we were kind of pricing a cantrip on turn 1 with our hand as well, bottom top. So I think that game 2 was really interesting too because I was forced to play basically through all the things hitting the table, rather than having counter magic up for them, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's a really key like understanding in the mirror is how to play from behind because it's pretty snowbally.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. A lot of the permanents are just so dangerous.
I'm gonna do something kind of weird here. I'm gonna fetch before I ponder. I'm doing that is I'm basically 2 good cards.
I'm trying to think of what fetching before pondering means. Usually to me that would mean a predict. But I don't think that's the case here. So I'm not sure what it could mean.
It just means we know all three of the top cards of our deck are great.
I mean, post-board, usually you just draw always really good cards at all times. This is probably the first AK. Yeah, I figured this would be a good spot to do for him to slam, because he has usually double 1 CMC counter magic involved.
Just gonna let this resolve. I'm not really that worried about the quantity of cards in his hand. He has the fetch to shuffle away a bad card. I counter it. That's a really big distinction when playing against Predict specifically is if they have the fetch up, shuffle away whatever is on top of their library.
Yep. Force of Will on top. So this probably will predicate a Force of Will. So we're well equipped to kind of fight over this. Again, I'm tapping out for this specifically over any of the other cards I could potentially have in this spot because Force Mentor only really gets hit by Force and Counterspell. The other threats kind of line up poorly against this, but if he also has an additional 1 CMC Counterspell, this is not... it would have to be an opposing Flusterstorm here, which is definitely possible. So no, and he's drawing a Force of Will, which is actually a horrible draw at this stage. This is still not the best spot because he can do a lot of interesting things like untap and then like Jace unsummon my Monastery Mentor, but I think given the texture of our hand, it's their only play. Mentor also, strangely enough, maybe it's not quite as strange, is easily the most powerful possible play in the face of a Counterbalance. So he has his own Mentor. I think I'm okay with that, given how powerful our hand is. So he has one card left in hand. It's probably either a Red Blast or a Spell Pierce, given the tapping out for the Counterbalance earlier. Top, and then Drew. So this is a pretty loud screaming declaration of a 1 CMC spell on top, but I'm going to do this. And played this game.
I love this game.
It's a fun game. Alright, this is probably going to get countered, but I think that's fine. It's also the worst of the cantrips available to me. Yep, as I assumed. So we have 2 Mentors versus his 1, and he has 2 cards in hand. And I believe he revealed a Brainstorm off of the Counterbalance flip there.
Yeah, I made a kind of weird decision on my turn. I kept the Brainstorm on top with the
Preordain?
Preordain, even though I didn't love the other card. It's really important when your opponent also has Mentor to kind of like stifle their velocity. So stopping them from actually getting cards off the cantrips is pretty big.
Definitely agreed. Alright, so this will pull him ahead by 1 card in the Mentor race.
Unless Min votes for the wrong monk.
So
we're gonna
again,
swing in here.
I'll take 3 damage.
Because since we're up on monks, we're okay trading them.
Okay, so we're gonna play this out. He's probably gonna have a 1 CMC spell on top. Yep, red elemental blast on top. So it's not good news for us, unfortunately, because we have to play this card in our hand, and it's a fairly high likelihood that he has another blast. Yeah, spell pierce. Okay, sure. Either or. So this is just a very odd game, because now we can no longer attack really. Our mentor just basically has to stay alive the entire time. Okay, so Brainstorm plus Reb in hand. I do not like our spot from this point in time. Monastery Mentor is a very messed up magic card, that is for sure.
Very swingy.
Yeah. And I think the mirror match is pretty indicative of that.
Of our 2/2 monks here, just because we know he's only got 2 cards in hand, so we can't go off that hard.
So I'm gonna get rid of 2 of his monks, and take 4 damage. Go to 10.
Interestingly, we could have just jammed
out.
the Reb there, but the high
there's actually only one legal target card for the Reb.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
There's one. Blast. There's one. Oh, okay, sure.
My bad. It is red elemental blast. I always flip flop the 2.
Yeah.
Anything with red blast, which is one of the problems I have with Keaton's list. There's almost no reason to split them. A lot of the decks you bring them in against don't play therapy.
Yeah.
Decks play therapy, and I can't really think of another reason.
Surgical Extraction is the other reason.
Surgical.
Yeah. And Vendilion Clique, but nobody really plays. Like, Surgical Extraction is something that I think happens pretty commonly to Keaton specifically, so I think that's the main reason why. I've talked to him about this at length as well, and he's like, I just can't, I get fed up with it. So him having Red Blast in hand, or almost assuredly having one of those 2 cards in hand, means the 2 cards in our hand, unfortunately, are going to kill us. So I think there's nothing that we can do. I'm trying to think. I think the best possible play is for us to do this, because it lets us at least survive, assuming he can't string 3 spells the following turn. This will likely get hit by Red Blast, though. No. Okay, wow. Surprising. All right, well, we're going to try our best to dig our way out of this mentor disparity.
One thing I chose to do there is I left the Red Blast on top of my deck to protect myself from 1-drops, because he has a mentor, and one of the ways he can come back here is by stringing a couple mentors together to protect the blast from Clique, because I don't want to counter a Clique.
So this probably means he's going to blast my Jace now, as he should.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to respond to this by doing this. Just trying to gain the information off of the counterbalance flip and predicating whether I'm going to fetch or not.
We know our top cards, so we're not going to show off the flip. He used to resolve Brainstorm.
I think I'm gonna do this. I'm guessing that you either have a 2 or a 3 on top of your library. Not a 5. I mean, it could be a 5.
It was the Baneslayer Angel that I stuck into my board.
Okay, this game got very interesting very quickly.
One of the big things that happened in this game drew off of the Brainstorm Triple Island to try to decide what the best way live 2 turns is. And I thought that putting the blast on top would stop you from double cantripping on that first turn.
I think given the fact that you were ahead by 1 monk, meant you didn't necessarily have to do any of that. But I could be wrong.
You think just not play the Brainstorm there?
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense to me, yeah.
I think you could have been more patient with it. So we have a kind of interesting decision point here, and this might be the most difficult decision that I've made so far in this match. And that is if you have a 2 or a 3 on top. I suppose I can then choose what I want to do with my Jace. Yeah, I like that.
You could just plus Jace on me.
No, there's a reason why I don't want to yet.
The Mentor.
So if there's no 3, so that means there 100% is a 2 on top. In which case, we're gonna fetch first and then play the and then activate the Jace Brainstorm.
Little does you know it's actually an island.
It could be. Magic Online and Monk triggers are not good friends.
Oh, it's the absolute worst. If you hit the initial Monk, it stacks them all at the same time.
Yeah, I just clicked on the wrong one on accident, so it just didn't move.
Oh, yeah.
It actually is an island, okay. So I made that... the main reason I made the play of not activating Jace is I could then, if it was another Mentor, I could then Fate Seal it down. Or if it was a Clique, I could Fate Seal it down. Alright, well, I think I like my spot here quite a bit, so I'm going to go ahead.
Our out right now is to hope that Min gets too excited with Mentor tokens next turn and times out.
It's possible. I don't think there's any way that we can die unless he somehow one-sided removals us, which is I don't think it's very likely.
If we get Min talking about the game, perhaps we can trim 4 minutes off of his clock and still die with 45 seconds left.
Alright, we get to see what's on top of his library now.
Do 2.
It's a 1, okay.
Oh man, that Pyroblast really isn't helping me this game.
No, it's not. In fact, it's actively hurting you. Ooh, alright. I guess this can be the lethal monk trigger.
See, the search for Azcanta...
It won me the game. How...
It did win you the game. I couldn't even Pyroblast it. Counter his search for Azcanta somehow.
Alright. That was a very, very interesting game.
That game was crazy.
Yeah, I think there was... Go ahead.
Match, we kind of saw someone come back from when they're pretty far behind, which My experience in the Miracles Mirror is it gets pretty swingy like that sometimes.
I agree. There's so many spots there. Like the second game in specifically, I think was like really really interesting because I was digging very very hard for either a verdict or one of my two judgments, and I wasn't sure if the mentor was going to resolve, so I kind of had to like play weirdly to kind of bait specific like blast moments. There was one spot in this game where I think I made the wrong decision, but in the decision that I made, I think it actually won me the game. So the turn where you spell pierce my Jace the Mind Sculptor, I could have clicked, and I knew you had a blast on top of your library. I could have clicked you into the draw step, baited the blast out, but then you just get to go rampant with the monk, and I can only cast one of them because I had 6 mana. And I think leading with the Jace when I had a follow up Jace in my hand was probably the most ideal situation.
And then it ended up being great because I just put that in my library, which in hindsight was kind of bad.
Yes,
I was kind of.
I think that cost the game there. Yeah,
I was tunnel visioned on you playing 2 cantrips on your turn and how bad that would be. But Jace is better than 2 cantrips.
Indeed. I think putting back the 1, if you had no other 1 available, was fine. But I would have maybe tried to get a bit more aggressive with, or when I say aggressive, I mean not actually attacking, but trying to get value off of my mentor because you were already ahead by 1 in the monk race. I think that is what I would have rather done, but it's not clear to me if that was correct.
Yeah,